March 24, 1945, Saipan Island. The Japanese intelligence officer couldn't stop laughing as he read the intercepted American communication. "They're sending blacks to fight us," he told his commander, Colonel Takashi Yamamoto. "The Americans must be desperate if they're using their inferiors as combat troops." 6 weeks later, that same officer would be dead, and those inferior troops would accomplish what military analysts said was impossible. But before we uncover this buried chapter of World War II history, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. The 93rd Infantry Division stepped off transport ships in the Russell Islands in early 1944, and the whispers started immediately. Not just from the Japanese, but from white American commanders who didn't want them there. Major General Oscar Griswold looked at the roster of arriving units and said to his staff, "What am I supposed to do with these people? They're not combat material." The Japanese propaganda machine seized on America's racial segregation with gleeful enthusiasm. Tokyo Rose, the infamous radio broadcaster, dedicated entire segments to mocking the deployment of black troops. "America sends its slaves to die in the Pacific," she purred over the airwaves. "They are not soldiers, they are children playing with guns, and the Emperor's army will sweep them aside like leaves in autumn." But there was a deeper, more insidious layer to the Japanese military's racism. Imperial Japan had built its entire Pacific conquest on the ideology of Asian supremacy, the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere, they called it. White Europeans were colonizers to be expelled. But black Americans? Japanese military doctrine didn't even have a category for them. They were, in the assessment of Colonel Yamamoto, less than the white Americans who are themselves less than us. Private First Class James Davis from Mississippi heard Tokyo Rose's broadcasts. So did Corporal William Thompson from Georgia, Sergeant Robert Mitchell from Alabama, and thousands of other men in the 93rd Division. They heard the mockery from both sides, Japanese propaganda and American prejudice, a stereo of contempt. Davis wrote in a letter home, "They don't think we can fight. Our own people don't think we can fight. Maybe it's time we showed them all." The 93rd Division wasn't supposed to see real combat. The original plan had them doing labor and garrison duty, building roads, loading supplies, guarding installations. Safe work, unskilled work, work that didn't require real soldiers, as one white officer put it. But then came the Treasury Islands campaign. The island of Mono, part of the Treasury Group north of Guadalcanal, had to be taken. Intelligence reported it was lightly defended, maybe 200 Japanese troops. The brass decided it would be a training exercise for the 93rd. Low risk, limited objectives. If they failed, well, it would confirm what everyone already believed. Lieutenant Colonel Everett Yone, one of the few white officers who actually respected his men, pulled his company commanders together the night before the landing. "Gentlemen," he said, "every eye in the Pacific Theater is watching us. They want us to fail. They expect us to fail. Are we going to give them what they expect?" The answer came at dawn on October 27, 1943. The first wave hit the beaches of Mono Island at 6:15 a.m. Japanese machine gun positions opened up immediately. The intelligence had been wrong. It wasn't 200 defenders. It was closer to 600, well entrenched, well supplied, and waiting. Corporal Thompson's landing craft took fire 50 yards from shore. The man next to him, Private Eugene Clark from Tennessee, caught 3 rounds in the chest and died before they hit the beach. Thompson dragged Clark's body with him anyway. "No man left behind," he said later. "Nobody was going to say we left our brothers in the water." The Japanese defenders fought with suicidal intensity. They'd been told these American troops were inferior, poorly trained, likely to break under pressure. So when the first banzai charge came screaming down the beach, the Japanese expected the black soldiers to retreat in panic. They didn't. Private Davis, the man from Mississippi who'd heard Tokyo Rose's mockery, was in the defensive line when the charge hit. 60 Japanese soldiers, bayonets fixed, screaming "Banzai" and "Die American Dogs," came at his position.
Davis's BAR, Browning automatic rifle, cut down the first wave. When it jammed, he grabbed his rifle. When that ran dry, he used a Japanese sword taken from a dead officer. He held the position for 7 minutes alone while his squad repositioned. 7 minutes that felt like hours. When reinforcements arrived, they found Davis surrounded by 19 dead Japanese soldiers, wounded in 4 places, still standing. The battle for Mono Island was supposed to last a day, maybe 2. It lasted 5 brutal days. The Japanese commander, Captain Hideaki Sato, sent increasingly desperate messages back to headquarters. "These are not the troops we were told to expect," one intercepted message read. "They fight with discipline and courage. They do not break under pressure. Request immediate reinforcements." No reinforcements came. The Japanese high command didn't believe him. They thought Sato was exaggerating or making excuses for his own failures. By day 3, Sergeant Mitchell's platoon had pushed 2 miles inland, deeper than the operational plan called for. They encountered a hidden Japanese artillery position that had been shelling American positions on nearby islands for weeks. The position was protected by a reinforced bunker complex that intelligence hadn't known existed. Mitchell didn't wait for orders. He organized a flanking maneuver, used smoke grenades to cover his approach, and led an assault that cleared the position in 40 minutes of close-quarters combat. When the smoke cleared, Mitchell had captured 3 functioning artillery pieces and killed or captured 47 Japanese soldiers. His own casualties, 2 wounded, none killed. The tactical excellence displayed by the 93rd Division shocked military observers. These were men who'd been given minimal training compared to white units, who'd been denied advanced tactical instruction because their own army didn't think they needed it. Yet they were adapting to battlefield conditions with a speed that impressed even skeptical white officers. Colonel Yamamoto, monitoring the battle from Bougainville, couldn't believe the reports. He sent his own intelligence officer, the same one who'd laughed at the initial deployment, to observe. The officer returned 3 days later, ashen-faced. "Sir," he reported, "these Negro troops fight better than the American Marines we faced at Guadalcanal. They are disciplined, creative, and they do not fear death." Yamamoto struck him. He said, "You are weak. You've let fear cloud your judgment." But privately, Yamamoto knew the truth. The intelligence reports were consistent. The American black troops weren't just fighting well, they were fighting brilliantly. They used terrain better than expected. They coordinated fire and maneuver with precision. They showed initiative at the squad level that Japanese forces only expected from officers. On the 5th day, what remained of the Japanese garrison attempted a breakout. They planned to slip past American lines at night and escape to the northern part of the island where submarines could evacuate them. The plan might have worked against less vigilant troops. But Private Davis, now promoted to corporal, despite his wounds, was on perimeter duty. He spotted movement at 0300 hours, 3 hours before dawn. Instead of firing and alerting the enemy, Davis marked their path and sent a runner to command. Within 30 minutes, an entire company had repositioned silently, setting up a perfect ambush. When the Japanese column entered the kill zone, the 93rd Division opened fire with devastating effect. The battle lasted 20 minutes. Of the 140 Japanese soldiers attempting the breakout, only 12 survived to be captured. The 93rd suffered 6 wounded, none killed.
Captain Sato died in that breakout attempt, shot through the chest while leading from the front. His last words, according to a captured Japanese soldier, were, "We were told lies. These Americans are true warriors." The capture of Mono Island sent shockwaves through both the Japanese and American military establishments. The 93rd Infantry Division had accomplished their objective in 5 days, with casualty rates lower than predicted. They'd captured or killed over 600 Japanese soldiers. They'd seized intact artillery, intelligence documents, and supply caches. More importantly, they'd done it without the support and resources given to white units. But the victory was met with silence from American military public relations. No newsreels, no newspaper headlines, no medals of honor. The War Department was terrified of what this victory meant. If black soldiers could fight this well, what did that say about the justification for segregation? What did it say about the entire racial hierarchy America had built? General Douglas MacArthur, Supreme Commander of Allied forces in the Pacific, read the battle reports with visible irritation. "This complicates things," he told his staff. "We can't have blacks becoming war heroes. It sends the wrong message to our own troops and to the Japanese." So the story was buried. The 93rd Infantry Division was sent back to garrison duty. Their requests for further combat deployment were denied. The official record listed Mono Island as a minor engagement with limited strategic value. The Japanese military had a different reaction. Colonel Yamamoto, reading the complete battle reports, issued a directive to all Pacific commanders: "Do not underestimate American black troops. They are combat effective and should be engaged with the same caution as white American forces." Tokyo Rose stopped mocking black troops. The propaganda shifted. Instead of calling them inferior, Japanese broadcasts started calling them the American secret weapon and specially trained shock troops. The racism didn't disappear, it just transformed into a different kind of stereotyping. Private James Davis received the Silver Star for his actions on Mono Island. The ceremony was held on the island, no press invited. The medal was presented by a white colonel who shook Davis's hand for exactly 2 seconds and said nothing beyond the required citation reading. Davis later said in an interview recorded in 1982, "We proved what we already knew, that we were men, that we were soldiers, that we could fight and die as well as anyone. But proving it didn't change anything back home. We came back to the same segregation, the same discrimination, the same disrespect." The 93rd Infantry Division would go on to fight in other Pacific campaigns: Bougainville, the Marianas, always with distinction, always with their achievements minimized or erased. It would take decades before historians began uncovering these stories, pulling them from classified archives and forgotten battle reports. The Japanese commanders who mocked black soldiers learned a harsh lesson about the danger of believing propaganda over reality. Their racism, like America's, was a weakness that cost them tactically and strategically. They expected inferior troops and met warriors. That miscalculation contributed to their defeat. But perhaps the cruelest irony is this: the black soldiers of the 93rd Infantry Division fought 2 enemies simultaneously. They fought the Japanese forces trying to kill them, and they fought the American system trying to diminish them. They won both battles. History just chose to remember only one. The island of Mono stands today as a quiet memorial. No monuments mark where Corporal Davis held his position. No plaques commemorate Sergeant Mitchell's assault on the artillery position. The jungle has reclaimed the battlefields, covering the blood-soaked earth with green growth. But the men who were there, both American and Japanese survivors, never forgot. In 1985, a Japanese veteran named Hiroshi Tanaka, who'd fought on Mono Island as a young private, traveled to America. He tracked down James Davis, now an elderly man living in Detroit. They sat together for 3 hours, 2 old soldiers sharing memories of a battle that history tried to erase. Tanaka bowed deeply when he left and said through a translator, "You were the finest soldiers I ever faced. I am sorry it took me 40 years to say so." Davis nodded. "We always knew," he said. "We just needed the world to know it too."